Hello, first graders. Welcome back to our second and final session of National Geographic Kids Bees. Think back to what we learned during our first session. Do you remember anything that you learned about bees? Can you take a look at some of the pictures to help you remember? Let me show you some of the pictures to help you remember. Do these pictures help you remember some things you learned? Can you turn and talk to mom and dad or brother and sister and tell them 2 things that you learned about bees? Great. You are right. Bees are amazing insects. They give us many things, such as wax for candles and soap. They give us honey. They pollinate plants so that fruit grows. And remember, we learned something about pollination and how they carry the pollen on their legs in pollen baskets. And remember, we took a look at what pollen baskets look like when they're empty and they're full. And we learned about the special tongue that bees have that helps them to drink nectar from flowers. And we learned 7 cool facts about bees, including the fact that humans collected honey from bees as early as 6000 BC, which remember is 8,020 years ago. Amazing. All right, let's look at, remember what these are called? The large words that give us the main idea. Headings, yes. Okay, let's take a look at the headings and make some predictions about what we might learn today in the second part of the book. Okay, our first heading is a bee or not a bee. Okay, and what do you think that section of the book might be about? A bee or not a bee? Look at these 2 pictures. That should help you to figure out what this section might be about. Yeah, does this look like a bee? Does it look exactly like that one? No, I think one of them is a bee and the other one is not. So what might this section tell us? Yes, how to tell whether an insect is a bee or not, or something close to a bee. A world of bees. And this looks like the picture we saw in our glossary. Remember when we talked about social bees and solitary bees? That looks like a picture of a solitary bee. Remember, solitary bees are bees that live alone. Yep, I didn't know that before, that some bees live alone. But these bees are social bees. Remember, social bees are bees that live in a group. Home, sweet home. Look at that. Do you remember what this is called? We looked at that word in the glossary too. Yes, that's the honeycomb. Remember, and the shape of each cell is a perfect hexagon, a 6-sided figure. And there are the bees. What are they doing in those cells? Yes, it looks like they are making honey. And the title of this, or this heading says, Home, Sweet Home. And honey is sweet. So what do you think this part of the book is going to be about? Yeah, probably how bees make honey. And look at this picture. What is this? What's going on here? What are those white worms? Yeah, This is showing how baby bees become adult bees. Very cool. And this section is titled Busy as a Bee. It looks like all those bees are busy. So what do you think we might learn about in this section? Yeah, all the different jobs that bees have, that actually worker bees have. And does anybody know what this large bee, the one that looks much bigger than the others? Yes, that's the queen bee. And her job is to lay eggs. And the workers need to take care of the queen. Here we have a bee sitting on a flower, collecting pollen. It says this worker bee is collecting pollen, and there you see the pollen on its legs. And this heading says keeping bees, and there we see a beekeeper with boxes with wooden crates, and inside those wooden crates are the honeycombs where the bees make honey. And we even have a quiz at the end of the book. And there's our glossary. Okay, so let's read this section of the book. Remember, we're going to read all the captions. Remember those captions that are in orange ovals? Those tell what's going on in the picture. All right, so I think we're going to learn a lot of things. First thing we're going to learn is how to tell the difference between bees and other insects that look like bees. A bee or not a bee? It's easy to mistake other insects for bees. They often look alike, but there are ways to tell them apart. Take a closer look at a bee and a yellow jacket. This is a bee, and this is a yellow jacket wasp. Take a closer look at a bee and a yellow jacket wasp, which is not a bee. Do you see what's different? How are these two insects different from each other? Can you turn and tell mom and dad or brother and sister how they're different? Yeah, the yellow jacket wasp has more yellow and black stripes on it. And the bee has a more orangish brown color and then black stripes. And the stripes are not as clear. And it also looks like the bee is covered with little hairs that the wasp doesn't have. And the wasp looks a little bit bigger too. And it has, well, I don't see the honeybee's wings, but the wasp has very large wings as well. All right, let's find out. Reading the captions. Here are some differences. Bees eat nectar and pollen from flowers. They have pollen baskets. If the bee is female, if it's a worker bee, it has pollen baskets. It has hair all over its body that helps catch pollen. So that's why the bee is covered with hair, because it helps the pollen to stick to it. Yellow jacket wasps, on the other hand, they don't have much hair. They do not have pollen baskets, so they do not collect pollen. They are not pollinators like bees are. And they eat mostly meat, such as other insects. So those yellow jacket wasps eat other insects. That's what they eat. But bees eat nectar and pollen. So they have different diets, and that's why they look different. Because a wasp or a yellow jacket wasp doesn't collect pollen. It doesn't need to have hair on its body. A world of bees. About 20,000 kinds of bees live on Earth. All bees are either solitary bees or social bees. A solitary bee makes a nest for its young. The nest is inside a hole in the ground, in wood, in walls, or in plant stems. Solitary bees collect pollen, but they do not make honey or beeswax. So they do collect pollen and eat pollen, but they don't make wax and they don't make honey. They don't make a honeycomb out of wax. They live instead in a hole in the ground or in wood. It says most bees are solitary bees, which I didn't know. I always think of bees as living in a honeycomb, in a hive with lots of other bees. But actually, most kinds of bees are solitary bees. Social bees live with many other bees. A group of social bees is called a colony. A colony of bees lives in a hive. Honeybees are one kind of social bee. As many as 50,000 honeybees may live in one hive. Bees care for their young there. They make and store honey in the hive too. So in the honeycomb, some cells have the baby bees and some cells hold honey. And there's the definition. Here's our buzzword. Hive, an open space within a tree, structure, or box where social bees live together. And this is a honeybee hive. And we have a joke up at the top. What goes zub zub? A bee flying backwards. Instead of buzz buzz, it goes zub zub. Home, sweet home. Inside the hive, honeybees build with beeswax. The bees mold the wax into six-sided shapes called cells. Lots of cells together make a honeycomb. So a honeycomb, here's our buzzword, a honeycomb is a sheet of six-sided cells made of beeswax. The bees put nectar from flowers into some of the cells. As the nectar gets thicker, it turns into honey. Bees eat the honey for food, and so do we. So honey is really nectar from flowers that loses some of its water and it gets thicker, and that's what honey is. Other cells in the hive hold bee eggs. There is one egg in each cell. The eggs hatch. The young bees grow and change. After 21 to 24 days, the young bees become adults. And there are the baby bees. That's what they look like when they first come out of the egg. And then they undergo all of these changes until they become adults. Let's read what the captions say. Each cell has one egg, and it's hard to see, but inside those cells are tiny little white things. Those are the eggs. So each cell has one egg. Adult bees feed and care for the young. They take care of the little grubs, the worms. These young are almost ready to come out of the cells. This is what they look like. They actually undergo metamorphosis or complete change, just like a caterpillar does when it changes into a butterfly. The same way, those worms look nothing like an adult bee, but inside the cell, they undergo metamorphosis. That means they change completely, and these bees are ready to come out of the cell. So it takes them 21 to 24 days for the young bees to be ready to come out as adults. A bee starts as an egg and becomes an adult in about 3 weeks. 21 to 24 days is 3 weeks.